packed up, ready to go. Well, hello. In a surprise twist, I'm going in for a C-section this morning. I have had a complication. I'll talk about that later. And it was time for the baby to come out. And it is a foggy Wednesday morning. I was, disappointed and scared and everything. But now I'm just excited to meet my baby. And he needed to come out, and we're almost about to take him out where he needs to be. And I can't believe we're about to meet the baby. So we're on the way up to the hospital, me and John, and here we go. That's your puppy.
Mm-hmm.
I had my baby. I had my baby. I had my baby. I am sublimely happy. Today, when I'm filming, I'm 1 week postpartum. I feel so much better. This week, I've experienced a lot of pain. I've been up to level 10 pain. I didn't even go for a natural vaginal birth like we planned. Y'all, it's like that saying, like, what does God do when, like, you're making plans? He laughs. Like, it was like that. So y'all know I had planned out. I had a folder. I had made videos. Me and John had gone through hypnobirthing training, which actually was handy just for him helping me deal with pain and scary situations. So much of what I was experiencing at the end of my pregnancy makes so much more sense now that I know what was going on with my body. So I had I thought this, because he's so big. Y'all want to know the birth weight? Do y'all want to know the birth weight of this child? 8 pounds, 13 ounces. 8 pounds, 13 ounces. Okay, so there's that. I knew he was big. I could feel that he was big. I kept saying, I've never been so pregnant in my life. I feel like I can't grow another bit. My belly feels so tight and so full. I feel like if you poked me with a pin, I would pop like a balloon. And all of that was accurate. I could barely walk. I felt my pelvis clicking and moving every time I try to walk. I had so many bizarre other symptoms that I had just gotten used to that now I don't feel at all. I'm like, wow, I had got down rough and I didn't even realize it. So I had a complication where I had way too much amniotic fluid. So I went overdue. And so just as like a precaution, because he was an overdue baby, even though I thought he was going to be early. So I was essentially trying to get him out for weeks. When I say essentially, I was literally trying to get this child out of my belly for weeks. And he would not come out. I was doing everything. And it was like just all consuming, trying to get him out of me. So he went overdue. And so I went to my midwife office and they do an ultrasound. And so the ultrasound, they said, well, you know, when you're overdue, it's standard to do an ultrasound. You need to make sure the placenta is still functioning and feeding the baby. You need to make sure his amniotic fluid isn't running out or anything like that, and just check on him. So I went in on a Tuesday for my overdue ultrasound. And so we did the ultrasound. He was looking beautiful. And I guess the first kind of clue is that he had been sunny side up. And during the ultrasound, he was face down, flipping sunny side up, he was moving all around, like in and out of good positions in the ultrasound. And so I was like, okay, he's not stuck sunny side up, because that was my worry. Like, and that's why I thought he was like not coming out. And I was like, okay, oh, he's in position. And then he flipped out of position back to sunny side up. And I was like, oh, he's moving all around in there. And so then me and John went to lunch and had a lovely little lunch. And then we went back to talk with the midwife after lunch about the ultrasound. I was expecting nothing. And because, you know, everything just seemed fine. I had normalized all of the pain and discomfort I had. And just like some pregnancies are harder than others. And I had a condition where I had way too much amniotic fluid. And he's 8 pounds, 13 ounces. And like I had so much extra fluid. They said it's like you're carrying twins. So my uterus was stretched about to bust. Literally. My uterus was stretched about to bust. And yeah, so it was like carrying twins. And they said there was a variety of complications that occur with this condition, such as losing way too much blood, stillbirth, different things. And so the next thing I did was like, all right, well, let's have a vaginal exam. Let's see if I can, you know, and they were like, he needs to come out. There's potential crazy complications. He needs to come out, is what they said. So I was like, all right, well, let's check. Let's go under the hood. And so I got a vaginal exam. And I was hoping, because I'd done all of this stuff to ripen my cervix and bring my baby down and get my baby in position, that maybe it looks like rock and roll under there. And I was dilating and effaced. Maybe I was about to just give birth. So she got under the hood. Y'all, my cervix had zero action. I was 0% dilated. I was 0% effaced. Zero action. So what it was is there's so much amniotic fluid up in there that he's just swimming around. Like my belly's like a little swimming pool. So his head, you know, you usually like lose a little amniotic fluid like more towards birth. And, you know, he nestles into place and comes on out. He's swimming in there. You know, his head isn't pressing on the cervix. 0%. So once again, if you're 0% dilated, they can't get in and do a membrane sweep. So they were going to have to like manually open my cervix, do Pitocin, pop my water. It was going to be a whole lot of stuff to try to induce. And they couldn't use cervix ripening medicine. Like there's actual like pharmaceutical medicines that can ripen the cervix. I was just doing all natural and like herbal, but there's actual medications they can use to help induce labor and ripen the cervix. But they could not use it on me because I had had C-sections before, and it would like ripen my cervix, but also make it more likely for my old C-section scars to open. So they couldn't use that medicine. That's why they would have to manually open my cervix. So all this was going to be crazy painful. and also with a high likelihood of ending in a C-section. So I was like, no, thank you. The safest thing for me and my baby, I knew at that point, was a C-section. And the midwife agreed with me. The safest thing for you and your baby at this point is a C-section. And so that was very, very, very shocking. I hadn't let myself consider that possibility. I had not planned for that possibility. I was not thinking that was a possible thing that was going to happen. So when they said that he needed to come out, like, they meant it. They started checking to see when I could get an opening in the OR. And they told me, don't eat anything else or drink anything else until we call you back, because if we can get you in tonight, we'll get you in tonight. And if not, we'll get you in as soon as possible. So I was like, whoa, reeling from all of this. I had intensely planned and was manifesting positivity for the natural, unmedicated vaginal birth. But, you know, obviously, I always knew I was going to do what was safest for the baby and me, because I've got 3 children. Mama needs to be safe, and baby obviously needs to be safe. And John, he knew I'd be disappointed, but that we needed to do this. And so me and John came back. The kids went to stay with family, the big kids, and we cleaned up around the house. That was a really good call, because when I finally did come home, it felt wonderful to come home to a clean house. Anyway, so we got operating room for first thing in the morning. So we went to sleep that night. We woke up at 8 in the morning. You know, there were little thoughts like, well, maybe I'll just go into labor tonight. You know, it was so much information to take in that I was kind of reeling and not really process. I didn't have time to process any of this as it was happening. It was just like, keep going, keep going, keep going. This is what has to be done. You're making decisions. You're moving forward. But it's like a roller coaster. There's no catching your breath. And so John and I, as you see earlier in the video, got all packed up and ready and went to the hospital. This is all a very long story. So I've been thinking about where I'm going to kind of close off for today. So I'm going to finish telling y'all up until the baby's born. And then the next video will be NICU and complications after birth. So y'all sit tight for that. Let me finish telling you about actually getting the child out my belly. So we got to the hospital. We had our stuff packed. We were prepared for a C-section stay, which is a little bit longer than the vaginal birth stay we had planned. We removed a lot of like the comfort measures and different things we were going to use during the birth, the natural birth, to deal with labor pain, etc. And so we had switched gears just as fast as we could and got on to the hospital. So we went into a pre-op room, and, you know, it's no birthing suite with a birthing pool. It's the pre-op room. So we went into the pre-op room, and the pre-op room was stuffed full of everything it needed to be stuffed full of, because they had to move it because there was like something wrong with the normal pre-op room. So the room was kind of small, crowded. At some points there was like too many people in there, and it was making me anxious. So we got in there. I got into a special gown for the OR, and you know, it was still just feeling like I was being swept down a river. Felt very out of control. Just like, here we go. And John was with me. Could not have done this without John. And I had a nurse that was nice and, you know, got me on the fetal monitor, and they had to do blood tests. They had to shave me. And then the anesthesiologist came in. So I'm an extreme feminist. Pretty extreme. And I have big problems with old white men in positions of power over me. And so he comes in, and so this is my third C-section. I am 38 years old. I'm no spring chicken. I've been around. But I gave birth at different hospitals with different anesthesiologists, different teams, different policies, I guess. And so my first son was an emergency C-section. It just kind of had to happen quick after laboring. And then my daughter was a planned C-section. And they had given me something for my anxiety, like an anxiety medication, before I got the spinal in. And so when they put the spinal in your spine to numb you for surgery, for cutting you, you can't move. That's your spine in there. They've got a needle in there. You can't move. You cannot. And so I have this panic disorder. And when the panic gets me, I shake and my muscles clench up. And I was scared I was going to get a panic attack while they were putting the spinal in. And I was like, I need something for anxiety. And he said, we'll give you something for anxiety as soon as we take the baby out of you. I said, well, no, I'm not worried about being anxious after the baby comes out of me. I do not want to have a panic attack while you're putting a needle in my spine. And he's like, well, you know, we really need you conscious, and your baby could come out floppy. He kept saying your baby could come out floppy. And he, instead of saying unconscious or maybe chance of stillbirth, he kept saying your baby could come out floppy. And so I'm trying to tell him this with my last child. They gave me a medication. Could you look at my records and see what that medication was? Because my last child came out and was not floppy. And he's like, well, your child's going to come out floppy. He just had a very shut me down attitude. He was shutting me down with everything I said. Just shutting me down. Old white doctor, just shutting me down. And I started to cry. And, like, the nurse came and stood on one side of me, and John stood on the other, and I think they were each, like, holding a hand or something. And I was like, I just need, and then I looked, and, I think looked at the nurse, and I said, can I get a midwife in here? Can I see a midwife? Is that something I can do? Can I see a midwife? And she said yes. And I was like, okay, I just need a minute with the anesthesiologist. So just give me a minute. I need to talk to a midwife. And so they went and found me a midwife. And I talked with the midwife, and I really just needed a minute to calm down. And I didn't even end up wanting any anti-anxiety medication after that. You know, I was like, I was going to do a natural vaginal birth unmedicated. I just got freaked out when I brought up the possibility of medication and what if I have a panic attack during the needle in my spine, and was shut down and unheard and out of control. So she was like, what can we do to manage your anxiety that is not a medication? God bless that midwife. And I was like, I don't know. And she was like, what if John or me could come with you in the operating room, which isn't normal procedure? She was like, let me see if I can get one or both of us to be able to come, because John can come in for the C-section. That's part of the plan for a planned C-section, is that your partner comes in, but not until after you get the spinal and they have you laid down on the table. Then they bring in your partner. So she tried to get her and John in. She wasn't able to get John in, but she was able to get herself in. The midwife was able to come into the operating room with me and hold my hand. And when the anesthesiologist came back in, I think someone must have talked to him or said something to him and was just like, you're freaking her out. Because then he was really nice and sweet and awesome the whole rest of the time, and like made me feel empowered and told me what he was doing and why he was doing it. And he just like changed his whole personality. Or either he realized he was like, ugh, I'm freaking her out. And actually, he was really awesome in the operating room. And I went in. I did not use anti-anxiety medicine. It was very brave. Right before he put it in, I started to feel like I was going to cry again. And I was like, can I just get a second? And I took some deep breaths. And then we went forward with it. And then he laid me down. And I felt freaking sick as a dog as the spinal was taking effect. And just like nauseous, hot, woozy, terrible. And then I got a headache right here. And it was like moving through my head, like really intense headache, until it got to the middle of my head. That was happening for a while, and then that went away. And I was like, I've got this bad pain in my head. And after surgery, the anesthesiologist told me that some air had gotten in the line of my spinal. And that was like an air bubble moving through my brain. Kid you not. Anyway, so then John came in. And I was so happy with John. And that terrible sick feeling had worn off. I was numb from like the chest down. They had a sheet up so I could no longer see all the scary stuff. And the procedure began. And I was so happy to have John with me. And I was so happy to be getting my baby. And it felt like a long time. And it felt like, you know, they were really pulling, and I did not remember them like jerking me around and pulling me around and so much action, and like the sheet was flapping like a hurricane. And then they were like, all right, here we go. This is going to be really big push. And so they were squeezing the baby out. You know, the C-section, the cut they made is like right around the bikini line. And so I knew like them pulling and holding me down and stuff, you know, they were pushing the baby out. And then I heard him cry, and I cried, and it was the best sound I'd ever heard. And it was just like everything inside of me knew that sound was my baby. That was the sound of my baby. Like, it just sounded exactly like my baby would sound. That's his voice. I always knew it. And I cried, and I was so happy with John. And then John got up, and I was so happy to hear the baby cry. But I knew, because they didn't show me the baby right away, something was up. So if everything's cool and good, they show you the baby right away. And they told me that. And they did not do that. And the baby was taken to like this side of the room. And, you know, I'm just waiting. I'm not asking questions. I hear, you know, the nurses and the doctors with the baby. They're still operating on me. My body's still being wiggled around. And they're, you know, I hear things like oxygen. I told John, I was like, go with the baby, talk to him, let him hear your voice. And, you know, I stopped hearing the crying. And he just had fluid in his lungs. And it was terrifying. It was terrifying, and I say it was terrifying, but in the moment, I honestly had a very peaceful feeling. I had a very peaceful feeling, and just an absolute peace that I knew the baby was fine, and I knew he was going to be fine, and they were going to fix him up. Like, I knew it in my bones. I just was completely, I knew he was going to be fine. I just knew. And so I guess I wasn't terrified, but I knew that it was a terrifying situation that I was in. But I had complete peace and knowledge and foresight that the baby was fine. So, you know, I was just like, go with the baby, let him hear your voice, talk to him. And So they were putting little oxygen masks on him and suctioning him out. And, you know, he just was having all that fluid in his lungs and wasn't clearing it, which is kind of a normal thing for any baby born from a C-section, because when you're squeezed through the vaginal canal, it kind of squeezes the liquid out of the baby. Anyway, the baby didn't get squeezed good with a vaginal birth, so coming out of the belly, a little liquid suction is normal. But his little oxygen level and like pulse and stuff were dropping, and they stayed working on him for a while in the operating room, and then they said they were going to take him to the NICU. And, you know, I told John, I said, go with the baby. And they're still operating on me. They're going like this to my body on the other side of this sheet, and my baby is leaving, and my John is leaving, and I am alone. My midwife was still with me. My love of midwives is powerful and strong and deep. My midwife was still with me. My John had left. My baby had left. I was alone, but my midwife was still with me. And so during this time that I was alone, and they're operating on me, and the sheet is going like this. That's not normal, by the way. So I'm just quiet. But I have this peace that the baby's fine. I'm not really worried. I think he's going to be fine. And I'm just existing. And then the surgeon. So I don't know all of this. I have no idea what's happening on the other side of the sheet. This all comes out during like what we're going to talk about in the next video, postpartum, immediately after complications. I'm losing a liter of blood back there. I am losing a liter of blood. And he asked me, just like casual, he was like, are y'all planning on having more children? So I'm in the middle of being operated on. My baby is left. My John is left. I said, maybe. And then he was like, he said, there's not a lot left here to work with to sew back together. And I said, well, can you sew me back up this time? And he said yes. So that was pretty concerning. And then eventually, they finished operating on me. Curtain came down. I was covered with a gown, covered with a blanket. I couldn't see anything of my body. And they rolled me to the NICU. I got to see my baby. They just like rolled me on a stretcher to next to like the baby's little warmer that he was in. And they were still, you know, fixing him up. And I got to reach out and touch him. And I was really happy to see him. And John was in there with the baby. And I still felt peaceful about the baby's condition. I was just quiet, taking it all in. And then they rolled me out of the NICU on my stretcher and to post-op. And my baby was born. And that was the story of my beautiful baby being born. And the next video, I'll talk about everything that happened afterwards. I'm incredibly thankful for my beautiful baby. I'm incredibly thankful for John. I'm incredibly thankful for Tom and Z. I'm so thankful that at this season in my life I get to have another baby. I'm so thankful that a week later I'm feeling much better. They told me it might take a lot longer for a lot of the different things that are wrong with me to right themselves. And I mean, I don't feel like jumping on a trampoline, but my quality of life is much better today. I'm on less pain medication, thank goodness. So, that is a story. That is a very different story than I thought I would be telling. But that's my story. And I'm alive. I'm alive. I mean, that really kind of tells you something about the experience. I'm just like, I'm alive. The baby's alive. I'm just so freaking happy we're alive. But I am. I'm just so freaking happy we are alive and together. And that's good. It's real good. We're alive. We're together. We go on. We living. I'll see y'all next time.